Oh, okay, so I'm coming with one more. So I think sometimes we can over or underdo things, and sometimes the more we try to communicate in order to facilitate communication, over communication can undermine communication, just like lack of communication can. So I humble myself if if these videos would seem to over communicate a point. But the main point that I wanted to say is that, so I'm talking about perceptual bias and how that affects people in terms of gender, ableness, um, ethnicity, race, and then maybe in times past, conduct, propriety, or just mental disposition and character, personality. Which the mental disposition, character, personality, and conduct can reflect those other grades of perceptual distinction, such as gender, race, ethnicity, and ableness. The conduct, propriety, and morality and decency, and or maybe even just normalness, because normalness can be as profound and valued as anything else, can yet inform the perception of those other ones and affect them. But what I meant to say is that what it amounts to, at least in the United States, one example is with men of color, the appearance of the N word in modern society. The N word is much of a lubricant. When the N word has an ER on it, it's a lubricant for discrimination and segregation. That's if a person employs the N word with an ER, it's a very segregating term. That word implies self and otherness. When it has an ER on it, it has otherness on it. There's a violence, there's force behind it in violence, but it's more so otherness when it has an ER on it, and that's why the ER is not so much tolerated by a person of any ethnicity saying that publicly. But that attitude, sometimes people with the very attitude of the ER on it, they might not use the word ER, but they have that attitude, and they may still be they may still be sometimes we respect people that don't want anything to do with us. There's a natural inclination to want to be accepted by what does not accept us. So sometimes people with the attitude of the ER can still be accepted and respected with that attitude, that overt attitude, but they haven't gone so far as to use that word publicly. But then with the A on the end of that word, the N word with the A on the end of it. Now, I don't mean to be disrespectful, because there's different degrees of culture, and things can be appreciated differently. So some people might use that word and they mean that word, and they'll die about, like, they'll call someone the N word with an A on it, and the way they feel about their friend with the A on it, if it had been a problem with that person and someone else, that's their problem now, and they're as committed to that person, and they feel about that person a type of way with that N word, and that's what they mean when they say that word. So I don't mean to disrespect that heritage, but what I meant to say is that I don't personally use that word, but I think that when the N word is used, it's either a segregating term with the ER, or with the A at the end of it, it's a lubricant. So it can be a lubricant for both solidarity and brotherhood and respect, but then also for mayhem and violence and disrespect. The N word with an A on it can be a lubricant equally, as in very, if you appreciate a lot of music that's called hip hop, it's right there on all the mainstream billboards, right next to all the love songs, the rock and roll, the EDM, all the stuff. There's the music that has the N word in it a lot, but it also, you'll notice that the music with the N word, as much as it has the N word, it also has themes of sexual depravity, which a lot of people wouldn't appreciate how detrimental and maybe even painful and violent sexual deviance can be. But I was really sick a couple of days ago. Like I had drunk some horrible coffee, and I had to pull over on the road and throw up a few hours later. That was a horrible experience. Then I had to lay down at night, and it was so difficult just to lay down. The simplest thing, laying down, was pure agony. When you felt like that, you don't know what feels bad, but you just feel bad, pure agony. That's what it feels like to throw up and feel sick because of a latte. Now, what would happen if you actually had a sexually transmitted disease that is a permanent, chronic, what's the word for it? You had a terminal diagnosis with a sexual transmitted disease. There's a couple brilliant and valiant YouTubers who are portraying their journey through coming past a sexual transmitted disease the type of sickness that they would experience with that disease is way far and beyond what I experienced a couple days ago because of a bad latte, but it would be constant, ceaseless. My father told me, my father comes from a part of Africa where they have an onset of a sexually transmitted disease is very strong there, and he did research for some political organizations around that disease, a sexually transmitted disease in Africa. And so he has an understanding of both the scientific background and how that disease has been experienced in that part of Africa, where he's from that part of Africa where it's prevalent, but it was not known to him until he was about 30 years old is when he started hearing about it, and it became on the scene then, like in the late 70s, 80s. And his mother was also asking him, what is this thing they're talking about that's hurting people? My grandmother had asked him that. But he has an appreciation of that in scientific terms, in studying and doing statistics with it, because part of his background was statistics in academics before he got into that work. But then also he has some of the culture of Africa and the how the people experience that disease and what they have to say about it, the people who are there with it and who it's also new to them. As much as people would say would think that the disease is common around that area, it's so new to them. And what they call it, my dad told me, is a chaser, is because with the people in the rural areas of Africa, it says that once that disease appears for a person, it chases them to death, and it does not relent until that person it does not relent. It chases a person towards death and does not stop. So it's a driver, it's a death driver, that disease. So as horrible as daunting and challenging and painful as it was for me to be sick for one night. Now it was strange because I was sick from about 4 in the afternoon to 10 at night, and at one point in the middle of the night I felt the sickness break, and I felt almost pristine health as I am alone at night in my bed, resting. Convalescing means healing. I'm healing and resting, and so in that moment I felt almost perfect health. Like it almost felt like a spiritual experience, just because of the clarity and sense of well-being that I felt at the point of that breaking. So I'm also talking about in this video before is that some of that breaking, that getting past challenge, is what might really be enjoyable as a man, or a person who is enjoying a man, or a person who is having the same enjoyment as a man, to come through something, resistance, obstacle, challenge, sickness, and then have it break as a means of fortitude and faith. That might be one of the really profound things. And then a day later, I had a circumstance break where I had an opportunity to do further work with some equipment that I procured after a misdealing, and so that was also another break. But that's for me though. But now, if you have a terminal disease that can be transmitted sexually, how horrible of an experience would that, to have that experience that I had for 5 hours, and then it not stop until it not stop unto death. That's how significant of a detriment that's what a sexual experience can amount to for a person. So in different music where the N-word is prevalent, you have a combination of themes of violence, but also themes of sexual maybe license, or not being careful sexually, and how painful and egregious violence can be to both men and women, and also sexual repercussions can be to both men and women. Both of that type of music is heavily attended by the N-word, like no other word is the N-word. So the N-word can be both a lubricant in both those settings, but also sometimes you listen to that music that has the N-word, and it actually starts to coalesce with your experience as a person of color in the United States. Like oh yeah, they're talking about making money. Oh yeah, they're talking about going through this and that. Oh yeah, they're talking about feeling this and that way. That's what a real N-word must be. I must be a real N-word because I feel like that and I experience that, and that's what they're calling that. Now I'm a little bit rough. I'm now having that sense about myself, and where sometimes it's hard to run up on something that is completely soft, completely benign, completely indifferent, completely oblivious. You need something of a pretext and precursor, even for things like assault and violence. But now if I have a rough appearance, or I have a rough attitude, or a rough feeling about myself, I'm not doing anything against anyone or anything, but I feel like a real N-word because I've been listening to music that tells me what it is to be an N-word, and I see something in my experience in that, so now I must be a real N-word. That more so makes me stand out as a target and a potential victim for people who don't respect people that are considered the N-word. So I just meant to say that the N-word it can be an example of an abusive dynamic in a society, but in a relationship where it's both a flattery and also a detriment and a precursor to violence and pain.